Welcome back. As the economic impact caused by the coronavirus pandemic continues to be felt not only in Kenya but around the world, economist David Ndii has castigated the government's approach, saying it does not understand the magnitude of the response required. He argues the key challenge to responding to the COVID-19 economic shock is policy instruments and not funding. Well, David Ndii now joins us live on Weekend at 1 for more on the same. Many thanks for your time, Ndii, this afternoon. Well, the government is deep behind the COVID-19 resource mobilization, trying to cushion the country from the impacts of COVID-19. But you seem to think the government does not understand the magnitude of the response required. Speak to us more about this.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. I hope I'll make this understandable. I am going to use a few big words, so I hope people will understand them now. What this is what in economics we call it a massive labor supply shock. People are not able to work. They are not able to work because as human beings or all living things, we are risk averse. In layman's term, we say self-preservation. As long as there is this virus out there being transmitted by people without symptoms, and there is no vaccine or cure for it, and it has the fatality rate we are observing, the safest things for people to do is avoid physical contact and mobility. And the economy cannot function without physical contact or mobility. So that's what the government does not seem to recognize. As long as this disease is out there, the economy will shrink. Shrinking of the economy is the rational thing for people to do to avoid the disease. So that's a very unusual thing. It has not happened since the Black Death in the Middle Ages.
So let's talk about the policy instruments that you think the government should put in place. As it stands, sources intimate that the government is counting on some substantial contributions from the private sector, perhaps a bit more borrowing here and there on top of what we've already borrowed as a country. But let's look at what's happening abroad. The U.S. government's $2.2 trillion rescue package amounting to about 10% of its GDP. And we have other countries like Canada also doing the same. You have intimated in a letter to the president, that the country needs to put aside at least 100 billion shillings to help cushion the country from the effects of this pandemic.
Yes, I have estimated that we can, within the existing budget, reprogram 100 to 150 billion for the remaining 3 months. Is it 3 or 4? For April, May, June. Now 3 months of the financial year.
Right.
So it is not for the extended period. That's within our budget cycle. I am working with our budget cycle. Then, if the new budget cycle starts, we then, depending on the outlook, then you probably program more money. And my own sense is we should also be talking about the same magnitude as, for instance, the Canada relief package, which is between 3 and 4% of GDP. Now, 3 and 4% of GDP in a financial year is about 300 to 400 billion shillings. Now, if you're looking how to channel 400 billion shillings into the economy, and you have to work on the supply side as well, running around looking for 2 billion shillings from the private sector is a waste of time and effort.
All right. And finally, even as we wind up, I mean, the revised national government development budget for the year was about 430 billion shillings. About half of that had been released by the end of February. Treasury has already announced the country will be freezing development projects and channeling that money to the COVID-19 response, which is seemingly what you seem to be advocating. Isn't the government then in the right footing on this one?
Now, once you say you are channeling it, and that's my point, spending money is not easy. Who does it go to, and what are the instruments for delivering the money? Two, the supply side. If people are not going to work, what does that money buy? Okay? So you can put the money, ordinarily, the government budget has something we call an absorption problem. Once they put money, it has procurement issues, it has all manner of processes of trying to get that money out. You can't work with that system.
All right. That is economist David Ndii seemingly advising the government to focus more on policy issues while cushioning the country from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. More to follow on that in our subsequent bulletins. And in